Hello everyone, and welcome to Bot 38 from the free ebook that is available on the World Xiangqi Federation website. The book is called Deception and Countermeasures in the Xiangqi Opening. This will be bot number 38 and it will deal with the deferred opposite direction cannons. So without further ado, okay, all these moves are considered to be standard moves. In this variation, Black would choose to go for the Black would choose to go for the left cannon blockade, trying to attack the central pawn and perhaps gain some material. Now it is considered to be mandatory to move this pawn so that the horse will be able to go to the riverbank. Now this would be the most aggressive and perhaps the best counter for red in this case. P7 plus 1 in comparison, if you play P7 plus 1, this would be a very big mistake because Black would choose to push the pawn and the pressure applied on this flank would be terrible. As can be seen, just only after 5 moves, red's right flank will now be very congested and the room for development of the chariot and the horse will be a major issue. Black can be said to have realized his primary goals. So if after playing P3 plus 1, Black would go for the deferred opposite direction cannons. Now this would be different from traditional opposite direction cannons because Black would have chosen to add pressure on Red's right flank before going for the opposite direction cannons. So far so good. Now with P7 plus 1, Red would have chosen the double-headed snake pawns, which is one of the most commonly used formations for Red in similar situations. Both the pawns are pushed so that the development of the horses, there will be room for development of the horses. However, this is done at the expense of the development of the chariots. Now, obviously there are advantages and disadvantages to both situations. Another commonly played move would be play c9 equals to 8. R9 equals to 8 to develop the left chariot as a foul chariot. Now, in this way, the board will become symmetrical in the sense that both colors will be attacking one flank. So if Black counter with P3 plus 1, Red will usually go for a left cannon blockade 2. Now, another possible option would be H3 plus 4 to develop the right horse, threatening to push the pawn forward and to capture the black cannon. Black would usually counter with C8 plus 1 to add pressure on Red's cannon rank since the horse had moved. However, Red could be aggressive and choose to attack the central pawn. This is one common line in this very complicated situation. Capturing the cannon. This would be a pseudo sacrifice. Check. And just only after 11 plies, the game would have entered the mid game or even the early end game phase. Now, usually Red would not want to do so because Red would usually prefer to try to have the initiative firmly kept in hand. Although the situation is simplified and Red would still enjoy a slight advantage, the amount of material left on the board would usually be insufficient to garner a obvious win. So H3 plus 4 is viable, but most players would usually shun this variation. So most of the time C8 plus 4 will be played. Blocking the cannon. Red will do so. And it will be a standoff in a rather even situation. So there will be room for material for development, but for both colors, their right flanks will be under attack. Now, if R1 equals to 2 are played, R1 equals to 2 to counter the double-headed snake pawns, Red will develop his chariot as a foul chariot to protect the cannon. And there will be two options usually for Black. Black would usually choose to play r2 plus 6 or r2 plus 4. Now, as can be seen at this point in time, Red would have developed both his pawns, allowed his horses to be developed, but this would be done at expenses of the development of his own chariots. So, although the black horses are not developed, Black would be compensated with development of the chariot to attack the red horses. So R2 plus 4 is another commonly seen variation whereby Black would choose to move the chariot to the to this file, to the 8th file, to add pressure on this blockade. And this would be Black would still be able to put up a fight. Common technical combinations that continue will be C8 equals to 7, and this will lead to various very complicated scenarios. So in this spot, R2 plus 6 was played, and Red chose to be aggressive with H7 plus 6. Now this was a very proactive move to fight for the initiative. Now one might wonder, would it be possible to trade cannons, or trade chariots, sorry, by edging the cannon to the edge file? This is also another very complicated position. One variation would be to play c5 minus 1, whereby Red would now prepare to play c5 equals to 7 and attack the right flank. Now, as I mentioned in other earlier videos, one general tendency of opposite direction cannons game would be eventually both colors would be attacking one flank, and it would be a contest of speed. Now, as mentioned, c5 minus 1 is often seen. It would not be advisable to attempt the sandwich horse defense or some pale corner cannon variation at this point, because Black would immediately trade material, and retreating the cannon will counter the effects of this chariot and also allow Black to prepare to play c8 equals to 7 to attack this flank. So Black can be satisfied with this situation, while Red will have made a useless move by advancing his chariot. So that is why c5 equals to 6 is usually not advisable in similar situations. Now r3 equals to 7, Black will continue to mount pressure on this flank, and Red will usually offer a trade of chariots. Now, a big mistake would be to, instead of trading chariots, a big mistake would be to play h7 plus 8. Because if this were done, Black would gain material with this skewer. Now, the Black cannon will now threaten to capture the chariot. If it moved, the horse would be lost. And Black would usually refuse to trade chariots and push the pawn forwards. If Red chose to capture the chariot, Red would have wasted a few moves just to move the chariot and allow a black pawn to cross the river to add pressure on this horse. And which is obviously why Red would usually abstain from trading chariots. Moving the elephant was to target the black chariot, which is why Black chose to block the elephant and at this point in time offer a trade of material. Now, at this point in time, just after a few moves, Red's right flank was still very empty and very vulnerable, and the issue of the centroid cannon would be a issue that Red must try to solve as fast as possible. And as can be seen, Red would now have only 3 pawns, while Black would have 5 pawns left. So Black would have more pawns and a slight advantage in this situation, and he can be very satisfied going into the mid-game. So c8 equals to 9 is usually not advocated at this point. And red will choose to play very aggressively with h8 plus 7 for the riverbank horse. Now this would be the move of discussion for this board. Common sense would dictate that since red was threatening to push p7 plus 1 to attack the chariot, it would have been better to move the chariot to safety. Now, two possible options would be r2 minus 2 while maintaining the pin, or r2 minus 1. But black chose to play aggressively with this move. Now, this would be the position of discussion for this board. There are two major variations. The first would be p7 plus 1, and the second recommendation would be h6 plus 4, which is the recommended variation. Now, at this point in time, we will need to also consider the possibility of trading chariots. Would trading chariots be an option for red? Black would capture the elephant, check, trade chariots, trade horses, and instead of h8 plus 7, c7 equals to 9 could also, c7 equals to 9 could also be considered, as black would now start to attack the bottom rank. Now, as can be seen, black's bottom rank was also rather empty, and the presence of the pawn would be a big issue. So this would be a very complicated attacking position. Both colors would have their scruples, they would have their worries, but they will be attacking one flank. So r2 plus 9, r2 plus 9 is usually not advised. So back to the board. In the first variation that was discussed, red would go ahead as planned and push p7 plus 1, seeing that black did not move the chariot. But would this be a wise idea? Black would choose to capture the chariot, forcing a trade of chariots. Now, it would be terrible if for red to capture the chariot at this point, because check, check, check. So just within the span of a few moves, we can see that red half of the red defense will have been obliterated, and the cannon will still be threatening to capture the red horse while delivering this check. So if the elephant will move, this horse will also fall. So red will lose material, and black would have a significant advantage if red captured the chariot over here. So that is why the chariot cannot be captured, and black would have to trade chariots instead. Now, at this point in time, black's most powerful piece, the chariot, will now have commanded two very important lines. This, the second file, and also red's riverbank rank, threatening to trade material. And black played very decisively, choosing to sacrifice material, giving red the option of choosing to capture either the horse or the cannon. Now this was a very good move that would gain tempi for black. Now let's say red chose to capture the cannon, which was an immediate threat, and this would be the wise move to do so, because the black horse was not a threatening piece at the moment, and it would still require some effort before it could be developed. Check. And this would be another very important move. It would be very enticing to play r2 equals to 7 to try to deliver a checkmate. However, red would simply choose to play h2 plus 3 and offer a piece as a sacrifice. Retreating the horse. And at this point in time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, red would have 5 major pieces, while black would have only 4 major pieces. So red would enjoy a material advantage. So capturing the pawn would not be an option because there would be no obvious kill inside. Instead, h3 plus 4 would be recommended because this would be a key move to control the situation. Notice that right from the beginning, the red's left cannon and left chariot have been pinned, and there was nothing inside to show that this pin could be freed in the near future. So retreating, and at this point in time, although black would have sacrificed a piece, red's material were very congested, and development would be a major issue for red. The black horse would be a terror, threatening to play h4 plus 3 and then h3 plus 4 again for a fork. And the development of these two horses will be a big issue because there will not be any clear lines for development. So at this point in time, black would have sacrificed material to clear initiative and command a significant advantage going into the mid game. So in the first variation, p7 plus 1 was played, but the recommended variation would be h6 plus 4. h6 plus 4 would be the ideal counter for red. It will be the correct path or direction of attack. So after h6 plus 4, black would trade chariots, and after trading chariots, the cannon would not be able to threaten the elephant anymore, and the black cannon and horse will be now under attack. So black usually counter with p7 plus 1. Now this will be a counter sacrifice by black. It is a good move and would allow black compensation in various areas and allow for black to be able to continue. And red will counter very decisively by capturing the black horse. A check. And although red would have the extra piece, black would now be able to be compensated with an attack along the central file. At this point in time, retreating the horse would attack both the black cannons. Another move by black to force red to show what he would do. Now, playing c5, retreating the cannon would be a very passive move because the red horse would now be prepared to go for the elbow horse attack or capture the pawn or the pale corner horse attack. Black, at this point in time, black could have used up 2 moves to move the pawn across the river, but if he wanted to keep his options alive and moved his pawn, he would be in trouble because a check, and as can be seen, red would have gained material. The pawn cannot capture the horse, or the cannon will be delivering a check. So by this time, black would only have 1, 2, 3 pieces plus a pawn that crossed the river and a potential pawn that might cross the river. Whereas red would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Red would gain material. Now, at this point in time, red's material advantage will be overwhelming, and if need be, red could always counter-sacrifice material and gain an advantage going into the late mid-game phase. So c5 minus 2 would be a very inappropriate. So it would be advisable for black to move the pawn instead to block the horse from threatening both the cannons. And red will continue to attack the central cannon. And at this point in time, black would be the correct time to retreat the cannon. It would not be a good idea to play c5 minus 1, because the horse would have another chance to attack the central cannon. Oops, sorry. And again, red would go for the elbow horse attack. Black would solidify his defense by moving an advisor and guarding this intersection, preventing the pale corner horse. Red must be careful and bide his time. He cannot cannot rush his moves and not play this move as a prophylactic measure. What would happen if red tried to rush his attack and jump the gun with r8+1? The black cannon would immediately capture the elephant and thus still prevent the elbow horse attack from becoming possible. And also, after capturing the elephant, no matter what red would move, black would be prepared to play c7-1 to target the red chariot, and also to play r2 equals to 8 to attack and go attempt the attempt the checkmate. So red would be in all sorts of trouble, and that is why it is so important to make this prophylactic move. Black could solidify his defense, and after playing e3+1, would red be prepared to play and sacrifice his cannon and play his chariot to attack. So at this point in time, this horse was roaming freely in black's backyard. There was nothing. There was practically no defense available here, and it would be a legitimate threat that black cannot ignore. And usually red would continue with p6+1 to try to form some form of defense on this rank. Now, what would happen if c5 equals to 7 were played, as red would try to gain material? Now, this would be a bad idea. Red would simply sacrifice material. If black captured the cannon, red would target the cannon, and red would, after counter-sacrificing material, red would now be attacking very aggressively. The threat of the elbow horse would be very, very, very significant, and there will not black cannot do much at this point in time without losing any other advantages. If black did not capture the chariot and chose to push his pawn forward to fortify this rank, check, and this would be a very brilliant move. Red, after trading cannons, red will still have the threat of the elbow horse checkmate still present. So that is why p6+1 would not be viable, although it would offer much more offense and defense than playing r2+1. So that is why c5 equals to 7 is not a good idea. So red will sacrifice material, elbow horse check, and red would prepare to go for the kill. Now, at this point in time, red counter-sacrificed a cannon to gain some material. So this would be the last move in this board, in this discussion. Okay, as usual, I will give a short recap. Now, this was the move, this was the deceptive move. After red played h7+6 to threaten the chariot, this was the move discussion. Now, in the first variation, p7+1, red would go ahead with his plans, but it will result in a huge advantage for black, even though black had sacrificed material. But as can be seen, the entire red's position was now in trouble. There are many things that black can do now, and black will be in all sorts of trouble. An older variation, r2+9, trading material will lead to a very simplified situation, and although neither sides would have a clear advantage, the game will be drawish and there will be little room for error. Now, in the last variation, h6 plus 4 will be the advised or recommended move by in the book. So after trading material, this horse will become a major threat to black. And after attempting to go for the elbow horse attack, red would now threaten to checkmate. So I hope you enjoyed this short video on opening theory. The opposite direction cannons is also one favorite opening that I like to see, and I sometimes play myself. I find it sometimes too aggressive for my for my taste, and but it's fun. It is quite a fun opening too. So if you like the work that I have been doing, please give me a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.